In early February 1941, the sands of North Africa began to shift. German ground troops and the formidable Luftwaffe started arriving in Tripoli, signaling a dramatic escalation of the conflict. This wasn't just a reinforcement of their Italian allies. This was the beginning of a new, deadlier phase of the Desert War. The British forces, fresh from their victory in Operation Compass, suddenly found themselves facing a far more dangerous adversary. The German presence was immediately felt in the skies. On February 14th, a squadron of Ru-87 Stuka dive bombers, escorted by Bf 110 heavy fighters, launched a devastating attack on British positions near Sirte. Imagine the scene: the terrifying siren of the Stukas, the Jericho trumpet echoing across the desert as they plunged towards their targets. British Hurricane fighters scrambled to intercept, and a furious dogfight erupted over the barren landscape. The German pilots, veterans of the Battle of Britain, were skilled and ruthless. In the ensuing clash, the British lost several Hurricanes, a stark and immediate demonstration that the Luftwaffe had seized air superiority. The days of easy dominance for the Desert Air Force were over. This aerial onslaught wasn't a one-off event. The Luftwaffe, in coordination with the Italian Regia Aeronautica, began a relentless campaign of air raids. They hammered British-held ports like Benghazi and Tobruk, turning them into infernos of twisted metal and smoke. The strategic island of Malta, a critical British naval and air base in the Mediterranean, came under constant bombardment. Convoys attempting to resupply the British forces in North Africa faced a gauntlet of bombs and torpedoes. The Axis aimed to sever the British lifeline, to starve their desert army into submission. It was a strategy of strangulation, and it was starting to work. But the British weren't taking this lying down. The Royal Navy, though stretched thin, fought back with characteristic tenacity. In the dark waters of the Mediterranean, British submarines became silent predators. One such submarine, HMS Upright, etched its name into history. On February 23rd, it spotted the Italian merchant ship Silvia Tripovich, laden with precious tanks destined for the German forces. A single torpedo was all it took. 2 days later, HMS Upright struck again, this time with even greater impact. It ambushed a convoy escorted by the Italian light cruiser Armando Diaz in a daring attack. The Upright sent a torpedo streaking towards the warship. The resulting explosion was catastrophic, and the Armando Diaz sank with heavy loss of life. These submarine victories were crucial blows, slowing the Axis buildup and reminding them that the sea was still a battlefield. Despite these successes, a dangerous sense of complacency had settled over the British High Command. Their focus had shifted away from North Africa. The looming crisis in Greece, where German invasion seemed imminent, consumed their attention and resources. Having just decisively beaten the Italians, they made a fatal error. They underestimated the new German threat. The intelligence reports were slow to catch up with the reality on the ground. They viewed the German deployment as a minor stiffening of the Italian line, not the arrival of a force that would completely change the war. This miscalculation would have dire consequences. While the British were looking elsewhere, the man leading the German expeditionary force was wasting no time. On February 19th, his command was officially designated the Deutsches Afrika Korps, or German Africa Corps. This was more than just a name change. It was a formal recognition of the importance of this new theater of war and a vote of confidence in its commander, a brilliant and audacious general named Erwin Rommel, soon to be known as the Desert Fox, was not a man who believed in waiting. He was a master of speed, deception, and surprise. The Afrika Korps began to swell with troops and equipment. Panzers, artillery, and battle-hardened infantry disembarked at Tripoli. But Rommel knew his current strength wasn't enough for a major offensive. So, he decided to create the illusion of strength. In a stroke of genius, he ordered the construction of dummy tanks. Volkswagen Beetle chassis were fitted with flimsy wooden and canvas superstructures to resemble panzers. From the air, and even from a distance on the ground, they looked real. He paraded these fake tanks through Tripoli and moved them around the front lines, creating the impression of a massive armored force poised to strike. British aerial reconnaissance was completely fooled, reporting a far larger German presence than actually existed. Rommel was playing a high-stakes game of poker, and he was bluffing brilliantly. With the stage set, the first ground clashes were inevitable. On February 24th, a British reconnaissance patrol, a mix of light armored cars and trucks from the 11th Hussars, pushed forward towards the German lines near El Agheila. They were operating on outdated intelligence, expecting to find only weak Italian outposts. Instead, they drove straight into a cleverly laid ambush. German anti-tank guns, perfectly concealed in the desert scrub, opened fire. The lead British vehicles were knocked out instantly. A German armored reconnaissance unit then swept in, cutting off their retreat. The British patrol, caught completely by surprise and outgunned, was annihilated. It was a small-scale engagement, but its significance was immense. It was the first time British and German troops had fought on the ground in North Africa, and it was a clear, brutal victory for the Afrika Korps. This initial skirmish perfectly encapsulated the unfolding situation. On one side, you had the British High Command, complacent, distracted by Greece, and relying on faulty intelligence that was days or even weeks old. They believed they had time, that the Germans were still settling in. On the other side, you had Rommel, aggressive, opportunistic, and already seizing the initiative. He wasn't following the textbook. He was writing a new one. While the British leadership saw a static front, Rommel saw an opportunity. The clash at El Agheila was the opening shot, a warning of the storm that was about to break over the desert. The era of the Desert Fox had begun, and the North African campaign was about to be turned on its head. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the early days of the Afrika Korps, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more military history content. Let me know in the comments what you think about Rommel's early tactics. See you in the next video.